that fact during our Halloween show.
All right, you know how in 1984 the main motivator was pain. Okay.
So the main motivator was
it was pain.
Yeah.
Pain. So it's quite the opposite for Brave New World. In Brave New World, it's pleasure. Over sensory stuff, drugs, different things of technology. That was the main motivator, was pleasure. And I believe this, that we're right now in a hedonistic society, where the goal is the maximization of pleasure and a minimization of pain, either it be emotional or physical. That's how it was explained to me. And I believe we're headed there, if we're not already there. And that's what Brave New World talks about. We became that, in the book, that we became that society, and that it eventually gave way to a totalitarian dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that book goes. Do you believe in conspiracy theories?
There are proven conspiracy theories that exist, but whether or not, like, Roswell or Area 51, most of the time I tend to be very skeptical of conspiracy theories. The ones I'm most interested in are the ones that were definitely things that were conspiracies that happened that have since come to light as true, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident.
Oh, you got to explain that.
Which got us...
Explain that, bro.
Okay, good. All right, so it's basically the reason we got involved in Vietnam. Is there was a report that a North Vietnamese boat had shot on an American boat, and this happened over the course of 2 days, and this needed to be our response. What ended up happening was, or at least what ended up coming out, was there was one bullet fired by the North Vietnamese. Everything else was fired by the U.S., which barely punctured the side of, like this major battleship where they're shooting out of basically a pontoon boat. And it only happened one of the days that they said it occurred. Nothing happened the other day. So that was a whole conspiracy theory to get us involved in Vietnam. It was basically Lyndon Johnson, who I definitely am not a huge fan of. It was his lie and excuse to get us into Vietnam so he could come off as a strong president against Barry Goldwater, who was also strong in his way. He wanted us to nuke North Vietnam.
You're telling me he thought that by starting a war that it would save his political career?
Yeah, and it did. He got reelected.
Man, that's fucked.
Or he got elected because of it. Because he was only president at the time because JFK was assassinated. Right. He got elected in '64 because we got really more heavily involved in Vietnam, and it was because of the Gulf of Tonkin, which was a complete conspiracy theory, bullshit thing that happened. There was also a conspiracy theory, not even a conspiracy theory, but a conspiracy that happened back in the 1930s, where George H.W. Bush's father actually hired, along with this cabal of other rich people, went to this U.S. general and it was just like, hey, we want to overthrow FDR and put a fascist dictatorship in its place. By the way, this is totally true. You can totally look this up. The general they went to was a guy named Smedley Butler.
Oh, God, he's a Marine.
They went to Smedley Butler and it was just like, hey, we want you to lead the revolution, overthrow FDR, kick him out of office, and then we're going to have a fascist dictatorship take its place. And he was just like, okay, let me go over here and do this really quick. And then he told FDR and...
Yeah, why the fuck would anybody think he would agree with that? Holy shit.
Yeah, and again, here's the thing. Do you hear about, H.W. Bush's father doing that? No, because he was, a rich, son of a bitch who bought his way out of it. And, I don't remember who else was involved, but I got to imagine one of the Rockefellers or somebody. I forget
Okay.
the story of the case beyond the fact that it was H.W. Bush's father and Smedley Butler, and Smedley Butler was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And in fact, let me testify before Congress that you were actually going to have me do that.
Right. That's fucking crazy.
The one conspiracy theory I'll tell you that I love that is not based in any truth whatsoever, and I think it's just fun and silly. Have you ever been to LennonMurderTruth.com?
No.
So there's this guy online who is absolutely fucking nuts. Like, if you go through his page, it literally looks like somebody's, cut out manifesto that you would find in a spiral notebook.
Really?
Where he's convinced that John Lennon was not killed by Mark David Chapman. He was killed by, pause for effect, Stephen King.
What?
Yeah. Because if you kind of look at the photo where John Lennon is signing that autograph to Mark David Chapman, if you close one eye and squint, it kind of looks like Stephen King looked at that time. And, of course, Stephen King was, under the auspice of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan to pull off this assassination hit. And he's been dropping clues in his literature ever since, which is all, again, it's all bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Stephen King is not a murderer at all.
No.
Nor was he really aligned with Richard Nixon nor Ronald Reagan. In fact, he was very much opposed to both of those candidates.
Right.
And, it's a very nuts conspiracy theory that I think is a lot of fun and luckily has not impacted Stephen King's life too badly.
I think like this, man. I think the most far-fetched conspiracy theories are the ones that could possibly be true. Because, not saying that one is. That's kind of ridiculous. But,
yeah.
But some of the shit that's out there, I tend to go into rabbit holes sometimes. I don't know about you, but I do it. And, like, some of the things that are out there, I could see them happening only because it's so ridiculous that everybody in the right mind would go, that's fucked up. No way. That didn't happen. But that's what the people that made that conspiracy, or that actually committed whatever they're talking about in that conspiracy, probably want you to think. That's
well, that's what happened with the whole, Smedley Butler and the Gulf of Tonkin things.
That is really
nobody believed that. Yeah, nobody believed that. This could be true, but in fact, it did end up being true on both cases. And yeah,
that's crazy. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have any conspiracy theories of your own?
That I have created? No. I like to read about conspiracy theories. I think they're interesting.
Well,
I don't know that I necessarily. Yeah, I mean, they're fascinating. I don't know that I really believe most of them. Like, I think Area 51 in Groom Lake, Nevada is just a place where they test, the latest in aircraft stuff, and they don't want people to know about it. I don't think it's from recovered UFO parts. Not that I don't think that we're alone in the universe. I don't think we're alone in the universe. I just don't think we've had a stopover yet. I think that would actually be news if there was evidence of a stopover by aliens.
You think we're like a charging station?
I think. Sorry, what?
You think we're like a charging station? Like Earth is a charging station for aliens?
That would be interesting, but they'd have to explain why probing people, charges their aircraft.
Hey, man, people do. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe that's why we haven't achieved light speed yet. It's because we're not probing enough people.
Seriously, dude. Seriously, that's funny as shit. All right, man. Do you believe that we are headed towards a socialist democracy that will usher in a totalitarian dictatorship?
You're asking two different questions here because you're using the word democracy and dictatorship. And if we have a democracy, we're not going to have a totalitarian dictatorship.
Let me
if we have a socialist,
let me tell you why I say that. Okay, because
sure.
a lot of people, I believe that a socialist democracy would would almost weaken us in a sense, to where everything's kind of given to you. You don't have any opposition, and it could possibly dumb us down to where somebody during an election could come in as a certain party, and all of a sudden they're like, fuck you guys are weakened up now, it's my time to take over. Much like Hitler did the same thing.
I think if we're going to have a dictatorship in this country, it's going to come from a right-wing type of dictatorship rather than a left-wing type of dictatorship.
Right.
The closest we're going to have to a dictator is Donald Trump, at least I hope, in my lifetime. And I hope we oust him, post-haste. But if we had elected, like Bernie Sanders, I think we would have been, in a better position, even though, he labels himself as a socialist Democrat. I think a lot of what he was saying, makes sense. The idea that, we should have universal health care. We're the only industrialized country in the world without one. I think we should be helping out, our fellow man. We should be funding education over war. We should be fighting poverty. And we should be doing a lot more for the people of this country and for the, aid to other countries. We should be doing more of an ambassador relationship with other countries than we are right now. And I don't think that if we had a social democracy or a socialist democracy, that would necessarily weaken us. I think we should just be helping each other as much as we can, and if we have to do that through government means, then let's do. It's better than people begging on GoFundMe for like, hey, I can't afford a new kidney. If it costs me an extra few dollars in my taxes this year to fund some guy's kidney operation or to give some kid an heart transplant, take my money, please.
I agree, man.
Yeah,
right on.
I don't think it would necessarily weaken us. I think it would actually strengthen us as a country if we, cared about each other a little bit more and, thought of our fellow man. We're addressing again those more systemic issues that cause, poverty and ill education and things like that, rather than, just funding the American war machine and, rising of xenophobia and shit that we do, now. I don't think we're going to head towards a totalitarian dictatorship if we head towards a social democracy. And I would hope we're becoming more progressive in this country. In some ways we are, but in some ways we're definitely not.
Right. The author.
I just want to say this. I mentioned Ruth Bader Ginsburg earlier, and she's now known as like the left wing of the Supreme Court. She was not the left wing of the Supreme Court when she was first appointed. She was middle of the road.
Wow.
And that's how far the Supreme Court has moved right in terms of everything. And yes, we have gotten more, really great things that have come out over the last few years by Supreme Court decisions. We can't, have discrimination based on gender identity. Gay marriage is a thing thanks to the Supreme Court. But at the same time, we're moving further and further right rather than moving further and further center or further and further left,
right,
as many in the media would have you believe.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you on that. Do you know what the Mandela effect is?
Yes, and I still say it's the Berenstain Bears.
I just trip out of the Mandela effect because of what actually happened with Nelson Mandela, because I distinctly remember him dying in prison and it being on the news, because it was the first thing of death that I ever learned about. So I had that memory stuck, dude, that he died in prison.
I know the people who have the memories of what was it, Sinbad being in a genie movie called Shazam.
Right.
But they're really probably thinking the Shaq movie Kazam.